Hi guys, Mimi G here. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, welcome. Today we're going to be working on one of my latest Simplicity patterns, 9776. Now this one shoulder dress is fabulous and it comes in two lengths and two variations on the sleeve. Today we're going to be doing view A. Now this dress is for woven fabrics and you want to make sure that you use something that is flowy and drapey. Anything from a rayon to a challis, anything silky or satin is going to make this dress beautiful. You could also use a stable knit, which means a knit that just doesn't have a significant amount of stretch. Now this is not a learn to sew video, so if you are new to sewing, please check out my online courses at sewitacademy.com. All right, guys, go ahead and cut your pattern pieces, cut your fabric, interface anything that needs interfacing, and let's sew. All right, guys, so we're gonna be working on view A. We're gonna start with pattern piece number 1. This piece is the same for the front and the back. This curve here is the one shoulder. This is our side seam. This is our shoulder. So I do suggest that you serge the bottom of this first before we sew them together, just because we have a line here where we're going to be stitching over the top of it, and it does get a little wonky if you're trying to serge this after the fact. So the shoulder and the side seam can be serged together, but this bottom edge you want to go ahead and serge if you're going to be serging ahead of time. So I've serged both bottoms. You're going to lay them right sides facing, and we're going to pin together our side seam and our shoulder. Make sure and align your notch. Okay, we're going to go ahead to the sewing machine and we're going to start by first stitching our shoulder together using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then we're also going to stitch our side seam again, also using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do our shoulder. Go ahead and serge your seam allowance. Okay, so now you should have marked where we're going to be stitching. So your pattern piece should have had a stitching line. Where that dot is at the bottom, I made a little notch here, and we're going to be stitching from the sleeve to that dot or marking that you put there, and then you're going to stop. So we're going to back stitch, and then we're going to back stitch when we end here. All right, so what you're going to do now is you're going to clip all the way through your notch or your marking, stopping just before you're stitching. Make sure that you do not cut past your stitching line. This is going to create the sleeve. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn this right side out. And because we were able to cut up until we got to our stitching, we're going to push that seam allowance out. And you want to go ahead and give this a press. So since I haven't pressed my side seam or my shoulder, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to press my seam allowances to one side. So we've gone ahead and pressed it. You can see that we have this bottom portion here, but the sleeve bottom is finished, right? This would be like the underarm seam. And you should have marked your stitching line here. What you're going to do is you're going to stitch through both layers, and that's going to create your sleeve. So I'm going to go ahead and pin because I want both layers to stay exactly where they are. So I'm going to pin both my layers together. I'm making sure that my pin is at the very top. That's also my stopping point. Okay, now we're just going to go ahead to the machine and we're going to top stitch along our stitching line. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and finish off the sleeve hem. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and serge it. The serging will give you a little bit of weight, and then I'm going to fold my serging and then do another fold. So what you can also do is if you want to do a narrow hem, you can fold the whole 5/8 of an inch, press it, and then turn the raw edge to the fold line, and that should help you also do your narrow hem. So I'm going to go ahead and serge. and then we'll go ahead to the machine and finish off the hem. All right, so I've gone ahead and pressed the 5/8 of an inch. I just wanted to show you really quickly what I do. I go ahead and do a stitching line that's 5/8 of an inch away from my edge. That helps me to make sure that I am pressing 5/8 of an inch evenly all the way around my sleeve, and then I use that stitching line as a guide, making sure that the stitching line is pressed just to the inside. That way you don't see it obviously on the right side, and then that will serve as my guide, and I know that it's 5/8 of an inch evenly all the way around. And as I sew my hem, which you'll see me do at the sewing machine, I simply turn this cut edge towards the fold line so that I can stitch on the right side of my fabric. Okay, so now you can double fold this, like I said, and pin it in place. I like to just do it as I'm stitching. So as you can see, I'm bringing that edge to the fold, and then I just hold, and I do a little bit at a time. You're going to continue doing this until you have finished the entire sleeve hem. All right, let's move on ahead to our front and back band. We're going to go ahead and place them right sides facing. Make sure that you're putting the correct sides. Okay, you have 2 notches on one side and you have 1 notch on the other, so make sure that you are aligning the correct side. Go ahead and pin. Now we're obviously working with the non-interfaced one. The interfaced one that we have is going to serve as our facing. So go ahead to your sewing machine, and really quickly you're just going to stitch down the sides of our bands using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then press your seams open. All right, so we have our bodice and we have our band. Both are turned right side out. I want to point out that on the neckline you have 2 notches. You should also have those 2 notches on your band. You want to make sure that you're aligning those. So what you're going to do is you're going to place them right sides facing. I'm going to pin my double notches first. Then I will go ahead and do the side seam. I'm going to turn this around and then go ahead and make sure I am lining up again the double notches that are on the back. And then the following side seam, or this is actually our shoulder seam. And now if you need to, and I do because I'm working with some slippery fabric here, I'm going to go ahead and pin in between my pins. Now once you have it pinned all the way around, we can go ahead to the sewing machine and stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have your band stitched on, go ahead and press your seam allowance up towards your band. We're going to set this aside for just a sec. You're going to grab your interfaced pieces of your band, front and back, and you're going to stitch them together the same way. Right sides facing, you're going to go ahead and stitch the sides. Again, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, press your seam open. Then at the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing that I did for my sleeve hem. I'm going to give myself a stitching line of a 1/2 inch from the cut edge. I'm going to use that as a guide for pressing the bottom edge up. Okay, so now we have our interfaced band. We're going to go ahead and place this right sides facing. And again, you want to make sure that wherever that double notch was on our non-interfaced one, it's matching up here. So you want to make sure it's on the same side. And then go ahead and pin the very top of our band together, match up your seam lines. And since we've already pressed the bottom edge of our facing, when we turn this to the right side and we stitch in the ditch, it's already nice and finished. All right, now that we have it pinned, you're going to go ahead to your sewing machine and we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I want you to go ahead and trim your seam allowance down to about 3/8 of an inch, pressing your remaining seam allowance up towards the band, and then you're going to understitch. All right, so I have pressed my facing to the inside, and now I'm going to go ahead and pin so I can stitch in the ditch. So I'm actually going to pin on the right side of my fabric because I like to stitch on the right side of my fabric. So I'm just going to feel for that folded edge and I'm going to go ahead and pin. You want to make sure everything is nice and flat. You don't want this pulling because you will notice the pulls on the right side. So you want to make sure that everything is laying nice and flat. Okay, now that we have it pinned, we're going to go ahead and stitch in the ditch. Okay, so our bodice is finished. We're going to go ahead and start on our skirt and our pockets, and then we'll join both of them together. Your pattern piece for your skirt is the same for the front and the back. So you should have 4 pockets. We're going to go ahead and pin those on now. Match up your notches. You're going to align your other side the same way and pin. You're going to grab your other 2 pockets and do the same exact thing to the other skirt piece. All right, once you have pinned your pockets to both your front and back skirt, you're going to go ahead and stitch your pocket down using a 1/4 inch. Now, I like to serge the entire side seams. That way it's all done in one full motion as opposed to stitching a 1/4 inch and then serging my side seams. I want to be able to press my seams open. And if I stitch these together, side seams, without doing that, I won't have the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of stitching down with my machine a 1/4 inch, I'm just going to serge the entire side seams of both my front and back skirts. All right, we're going to go ahead and lay front to back, right sides facing. And first you want to make sure that you are matching up those seams where you attached your pocket. And you should have a dot where you're going to start and stop. So you're going to go ahead and pin there. You should have another dot towards the bottom of your pocket. And now you can continue pinning the rest of your side seam. And we'll close out our pocket after. Now go ahead and pin your other side seam the same way. Okay, I have both my side seams pinned. I went also ahead and pinned my pockets together. We're gonna head to the sewing machine. We're gonna be starting at the hem. We're gonna work our way up until our first dot. You're going to back stitch, break your stitch. We're gonna move up to the second dot, back stitch, and stitch to the top of our skirt. Then once we've done that to both side seams, we can go ahead and close our pocket. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop and back stitch at the dot. While we're here, we're going to go ahead and close out our pocket. You're going to go ahead and sew your other side seam and pocket the same way, and then you can go ahead and serge or finish off the raw edge of your pocket. All right, so we have our pocket stitched. Now I went ahead and, as you can see, pressed my side seam open. Decide which one is going to be your front and your back, because obviously the front and the back are the same, but whatever side you choose is going to be your front. That's where you're going to place your pockets. Okay, so I've chosen this side. And I went ahead and clipped into my corner so I can press this part of my seam open and then press my pocket to one side. I also, while I was at my serger, serged the bottom hem of my skirt, and I also did the top. Now the reason I do the top is because anytime that I am inserting elastic or gathering, I find it a lot neater if I serge my edge beforehand. So that's why I went ahead and did that, and at the same time made sure to catch the top of my pocket in place so that now I know this is my front, this is my back. Now we're going to go ahead and attach our bodice to our skirt. All right, so I have the right side of my skirt facing me, my pockets, that's how I know it's the front. And I also went ahead and placed a pin on the front of my bodice. So you could honestly put this on either side. Like if you want your sleeve to be on the right side of your body or on the left side of your body, it really doesn't matter. Front and back are exactly the same. So you decide. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and pin side seams first. That's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna make sure that my right side is facing, where's my pin? There it is, okay. Now the side seam of our top is where we have that sort of little stitch that we cut when we made that top stitching. So that's what you're gonna use as your side seam. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pin first before I turn my skirt inside of my bodice. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure that that tiny slit and that side seam are matched up, and I'm gonna pin. Now that it's pinned, I can go ahead and put my skirt inside. This just helps me so that I don't get lost. Okay, now right sides are facing. You can go ahead and pin your other side seam. So matching up the side seam of your bodice to the side seam of your skirt. And then just continue pinning until you have pinned all the way around. You also have notches to help you if you want to align those notches. Okay, now that we have it pinned, we're going to go ahead and stitch all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we're gonna stay here because we're gonna create the casing for our elastic. So the only difference is we're gonna be leaving a small opening so that we can insert our elastic. We're using 1/4 inch elastic, so what I like to do, since my raw edge is already serged, is I use the guide of my serge as the guide for my stitching. You wanna leave at least just over 1/4 inch. That'll be about 3/8 of an inch. Now before you reach our starting point, you're gonna leave about a 2-inch opening. We're gonna use this opening to insert our elastic. All right, you're gonna cut a piece of elastic using the elastic guide piece that you have in your pattern. And you could either use a safety pin or one of these whatchamacallits that I will link to in my description box. And you're going to go ahead and insert through your opening and work your way all the way around, making sure that you don't lose the tail end of your elastic. Okay, I'm gonna pin the tail end to my fabric so that I don't lose it by accident. All right, once both of your ends are out, you're going to go ahead, first make sure that your elastic isn't twisted. You're gonna go ahead and pull and overlap them about a 1/2 inch, and you're gonna stitch this closed, and then we'll go ahead and close out the opening of our casing. Okay, once you stitch your elastics together, just go ahead and give it a good pull all the way around to distribute your elastic evenly. And now you just have to go back to your sewing machine and close up this little opening that we left. So you're gonna go ahead and do that. Turn your dress right side out. All right, once you close up your opening, the only thing left for you to do is to finish the hem of your skirt, and you are all done. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this sew along. Please make sure and follow me on Instagram if you're not following already at Mimi G Style. I cannot wait to see all of your amazing makes, so please tag me. Until next time, peace.